All right. Okay, so what I'm here to talk about, yes, you noticed the headlamp on my head, and I'll be doing some live theater here. So this is kind of the demos could go well or they could go completely terribly, and we'll find out, I guess. So I'm coming with some very exciting news. In this wonderful year 2020, the era of the internet, the year of Linux on the desktop, it's so much easier to screw up than it has ever been before. You can screw up in so many more ways than you ever thought were possible, and you can make even bigger screw ups too. This is really good news. No, I'm serious. This is really good news. And over the next 10 minutes, I'm going to tell you about one of my new favorite ways to screw up. But before we get there, we make tiny screw ups that we learn from every single day. And it's important that we have the space to do it. Screwing up is how we learn, or phrased a different way, you can't learn without space to screw up. For work recently, I was learning Rust, maybe for the first time or maybe for the third time, depends on who you ask. And I was just immensely grateful for a compiler that taught me how to screw up. Let me just bring up a little window here. And I'm going to open up some Rust here. Let's see if we can test my knowledge here. Function main is print line. I'd like to just print 2 plus 2 here. Easy enough. Rust C main.rs. And the compiler tells me that I've screwed up, and the compiler helpfully gives me this hint here and says, okay, in order to not do that, why don't you invoke print line as if it were a macro? Okay, I'll do that. And it tells me, okay, I've screwed up one more time here. And it tells me, so the compiler is telling me that I've screwed up and has given me space to screw up. And rather than crashing the computer or something else, it instructs me how to not do that. So you can't learn without space to screw up. And I want to tell briefly, to put a little bit of context here, about a time when I couldn't screw up. In 2005, it was really, really expensive to screw up hardware. I was a kid, I was in high school. I knew I was interested in electronics and hardware and all that kind of stuff, and it was so expensive. I would go to Radio Shack and I'd get these like $10 resistor kits. And if I wanted to get integrated circuits, if Radio Shack had the one that I wanted, they were like $3 a shot. And so if I blew that up, $3 right there, right? And if I wanted to get something Radio Shack didn't have, I'd have to go online and order it. I'd go to DigiKey, and UPS shipping was like $20, and it would take like a week and a half for my DigiKey. Man, it was bad. And like if I wanted to fab out a PCB, back in 2005, the cheapest that I could do was advanced circuits. So that was 4PCB, you might remember, if you were thinking about those kinds of things back then. And they had their $33 each special, which wasn't $33 each because you had to order 3 of them. So that was $100. And for your $100, you got 3 copies of a 2-layer no solder mask board in 2005 dollars. So in 2020 dollars, that's $130. Anyway, so like what would you do? You know, you're a kid interested in electronics. Out would come the LaserJet that you got from the town dump, and I'd run inkjet photo paper through it, and I'd iron it on, and I'd get out the nasty etchant chemicals. And since I didn't have a soldering station, you know, I had this kind of Weller fire starter station. I'd solder surface mount parts in my mom's toaster oven. Hi, Mom. Happy Mother's Day. And the results were bad. Like I would end up with like very crispy boards. So I didn't make a whole lot of boards, and my skills consequentially never really got very good. If you can think about it, like you could imagine that instead of having a compiler that a second later gave you an error that told you it was wrong, it was a compiler that took a whole evening of work in nasty chemicals and didn't really tell you it was wrong, just had a bunch of things shorted together, and you blew up your board. So I'm here to tell you that in 2020, screwing up hardware is cheap and fast. Over the past couple of years, there's been almost an explosion of extremely low-cost PCB vendors. In the US, we have Osh Park. I think they're based out of Oregon. And so there, let's see, 3 copies for $5 a square inch. And it ships in 9 to 12 days. So, okay, sure. PCBWay in Shenzhen, that's even faster. And JLC PCB, okay, here you go. PCB plus surface mount assembly from $2. You can get anything in Shenzhen. All right. And so this whole thing, I didn't really believe it. I ordered some circuit boards. I designed a board. I'll hold it up to the camera in a moment here. I designed a board, and I designed it in KiCad, totally open source software. Here they are. I got them a week later. I'm just, you got me here just in time to put the finishing touches on soldering it here. So let me show you. I've got my little USB microscope here. I've got a soldering iron, and all I've got to do is I've got to get this voltage regulator right on here. You can see that it heats up. And while I'm doing that, let's just add a little more solder here. Come here, you. And you'll see that as soon as the part heats up, as soon as it wicks, you get this little sucking effect where the pad, or where the part just lines itself right up on the pad there. Right, the reason why I'm wearing this headlamp is I can get a little extra light on here to help with these little tiny surface mount components. Come here. One of those, and one of those. All right. All right, perfect. Done deal. And the most exciting thing, I think the most exciting thing about a board bring up is, or about getting boards back, is the first time you get to power it on. So I have my little bench power supply here. You don't need a bench power supply to do electronics these days. You can get away with just so much less. Connect that like that. Gave myself 2 nice little pins there. The most exciting thing is powering up for the first time. Oh man, that just went up in smoke real good. That's not great. That smells really bad. Oh man. Ha! Gotcha. I thought you thought I wasn't expecting that. I made this totally classic mistake. I assigned the pins on the voltage regulator wrong. It happens all the time. It just happened on a board that I brought up for one of my clients. Like the experts, the pros did this. And so like this kind of thing, it's so common. And this is the kind of thing you couldn't do before. And so, okay, here we go. Another week. Let's say I just fabbed out the replacement for this. And another $10 later, let's just go right back over to the cameras here. Put this one right under my microscope. Find that there. And so like previously this would have been the end of it, right? I wouldn't have done another version of this board because it's so expensive and it's just so agonizing when things go wrong like this. Uh-oh, chasing it under the microscope. It's just so agonizing when these kinds of things go wrong. And, you know, it's just miserable, right? And so now that this didn't cost me, everything that I'd earned in a week kind of thing or whatever it was, it's a much different story. So hang on. So let's power this on this time. Power this, put that there, get one of those there, give myself plenty of power, and ooh, more smoke. Boy, that smells really bad. Oh god, tantalum cap smoke. Okay, so again, you can just keep making mistakes. This is the amazing thing that I just love about this process now, that just totally wasn't possible. What happened there, I don't know if you noticed, is on electrolytic caps, on electrolytic capacitors, one specific type of capacitor, the little line, you can see it, I'll point to it, this little line on the end of the cap marks negative, but on tantalum capacitors, it marks positive. And this is one of those things that, yes, you could read the data sheet and you could learn that and all that kind of stuff. And you could, let's see if I can pick up another one and just place the replacement there. My hands might be too shaky and this board might get away without it. Yeah, I think this board will be fine without. Well, let's see if this one works, huh? This is one of those things that you can learn either by reading Wikipedia and reading the data sheets. Hey, look at that, it's blinking. All right. You can learn it that way, or you can learn it the hard way. And the hard way is kind of the more fun way sometimes. That's kind of my claim. So in 2005, this whole thing would have cost me $200, and it would have cost me 2 months, and that's just for the boards, okay? And so for the parts, it would have been another $30 in parts, or 20 bucks in UPS shipping. And really what that would have meant is I would have given up before I even tried. And so the amazing thing is, here in 2020, I ordered boards on a Saturday evening and they arrived on a Thursday evening from Shenzhen. And the whole thing cost me 20 bucks. I actually ordered both rounds because, as you may have noticed, that was a planned screw up, right? But okay, so that whole thing for 10 boards, 10 totally custom boards, 2 different designs in there. The whole thing ran me 20 bucks shipped, and then the parts ran me about 30 bucks shipped. I ordered those on Saturday evening. They arrived Tuesday evening. And you can do this at home. I used a hand-me-down soldering station from a former housemate and a hand-me-down power supply. You can get soldering stations for really cheap these days. If you're daring, you could cut open a USB cable and get you some 5-volt power. This microscope was 25 bucks off Amazon. Why wait? Okay, what do I actually have to tell you here? Make mistakes. It's so important to make mistakes. And when you're making mistakes, that could be in the compiler, it could be when you're actually physically assembling things. You might tear something apart and rip a cable, and while you're trying to fix it, it happens all the time. You can't learn without it. Blow some stuff up, right? Don't get conservative in your designs because you're worried about not letting out the magic smoke. Let out as much magic smoke as you can. It's lots of fun. It smells a little bit bad. And the overarching thing here is that it's important to feel safe screwing up. It's important that you feel kind of financially safe in screwing up. That means that it's a 20-buck disaster rather than a $100 disaster. It's important with your compiler to not crash your machine. And so when Rusty complains about the borrow checker and this and that and the other thing, it's important to feel safe that you're not going to like overwrite your root file system. And so having those guards helps us experiment. And in human spaces, it's important to feel safe screwing up also. I feel like I love the Bang Bang Con aesthetic of we have the hard rules of things not to do, but we have these social rules of the well actuallys that somebody can come up to you and say, you just well actually'd them. And you go like, oh man, thanks for telling me. And you feel safe making a mistake because you know you can learn. Whether you're using Rust-C or whether you're in a soldering iron or in a real live space or a virtual space together, there's never been a better time to screw up. Thank you to all of you who stuck around to the end to watch, and thanks to the Bang Bang Con organizers this year who gave us a joyful, delightful, and surprising conference, despite all of us sitting around sheltered in place.